My name is Amaranta Hale, and I turned 70 this spring. People say I'm steady, slow to anger, careful with my words, and too polite for my own good. Maybe that's true. I like things folded right, bills paid on time, and the house quiet enough to hear the kettle click when it cools. That morning, I was ironing my old linen tablecloth, the one from my wedding pale cream, with tiny stitched ivy at the corners. I'd planned to use it for Thanksgiving, even though my daughter Petrea had offered to host this year. Hosting had slowly come to mean using my recipes and my money while taking the credit, but I let it be. Some traditions are easier to keep than to fight. The phone buzzed beside the teacup. A message lit the screen. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot." No greeting, no explanation, just that. The kind of cruelty that lands soft and burns slow. I read it twice, waiting for the just kidding that never came. The room seemed to shrink around the words. I could almost hear her voice, sharp, impatient, that grown child tone that still carried every argument from her teenage years. For a moment, I thought I might drop the phone. Instead, I set it down, adjusted my glasses, and typed a single word. Okay. Then I walked to the desk by the window, the one with the brass lamp and the old checkbook I still balanced by hand. My tea went cold as I flipped through the pages. The family phone plan, the power bill, the mortgage supplement I'd been covering for just a few months, the insurance copay, the groceries. Each line felt heavier than the last. I drew one neat line through each payment one after another until the paper looked clean again. Outside, the November light was thin, almost silver. I could see the oak leaves trembling against the window pane, the kind of quiet that feels final. When I put the pen down, the house was still. Not empty, just still. I took a slow breath, gathered the folded tablecloth and set it back in the drawer. Thanksgiving would go on without me. That I decided was just fine. Tomorrow, I'd start sorting the rest. 10 years ago, when my husband died after his second stroke, the house felt too large for one person. Petrea moved back in to help. That was her phrase, soft, generous, and full of promise. She brought her husband Evan and boxes of things she said she'd only keep for a little while. I remember standing in the doorway, trying to make space in rooms still heavy with my husband's scent. At first, it was comforting voices in the kitchen. Someone to eat with laughter coming down the hall. Petrea took over the grocery lists, the mail, the accounts. She said, "You shouldn't worry about all that, Mom. I'll handle it." It sounded like kindness. Maybe it was in the beginning. Then came her second degree, a master's program she said would secure a better future. I signed the forms, paid the tuition, $23,000, and told myself it was an investment in her independence. When Evan's business hit trouble, I covered their late payments and kept quiet about it. Petrea promised they'd repay me once things stabilized. I still have that word written on the note she left by the coffee pot. "Mom, you wouldn't understand," she told me once when I asked about the mounting bills. "The economy's different now. Grief doesn't pay the mortgage," I answered. She smiled, then a small, pitying smile, and kissed my cheek, like I'd said something sweet but foolish. For a while, we played the part. Sunday brunches on the porch. Photos in matching sweaters for the church bulletin. Petrea holding my arm, the devoted daughter. I told myself she just needed time to find her footing, that her sharp tone and hurried explanations were stress, not disdain. But every month another bill arrived in my name. Every favor became an expectation. I'd step into my husband's old office, the air stale with memories, and wonder when I'd started apologizing for being careful with money. The house was full again, but it no longer felt like mine. The group chat began buzzing before breakfast. My phone blinked with messages, recipes, emojis, photos of table decorations. "Can't wait for Thursday. We'll bring the sweet potatoes." The list of names scrolled down like an invitation I hadn't received. Cousins, in-laws, friends of friends. My name wasn't there. I waited a few minutes thinking maybe they'd forgotten to tag me. Then I typed, "Did you forget me?" The typing dots appeared, paused, disappeared. Finally, Petrea replied, "Limited seating. Try Christmas if you behave." It took me a moment to understand what she meant. Behave. As if I were a child at her mercy. No one else said a word. Not Evan, not my sister-in-law Patrice, not even Dylan the golden nephew who could do no wrong. Their silence pulsed in the thread like a heartbeat I couldn't unhear. I called Petrea. The sound of clinking dishes filled the line, laughter echoing behind her. "What is this about?" I asked. "You embarrassed Dylan last month," she said, voice clipped. "At his promotion dinner. He's still upset." "Embarrassed him," I repeated. I asked why he was bragging about his bonus while still borrowing money from me. "That's not embarrassment, that's truth." "Mom," she sighed the way people sigh when they want you to stop existing for a minute. "You made everyone uncomfortable. Maybe comfort isn't the point," I said. A chair scraped in the background. Someone, Patrice maybe, called out, "There she goes again, budget police." Laughter followed. My throat went dry. "Petrea," I said quietly, "stop using my debit card for the electric bill." The laughter cut off. For a moment, all I heard was the faint hum of their refrigerator through the speaker. Then the line went dead. I sat in the stillness of my kitchen phone, heavy in my hand. On the counter, the ledger lay open from the night before, the ink still glistening where I'd crossed out her payments. I closed it gently and turned off the phone. The house, once filled with their noise, went perfectly silent. Thanksgiving morning arrived without a sound. No phone calls, no invitations, just the soft hiss of the kettle and the faint hum of my refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen table buttering a piece of toast I didn't want while my phone lit up beside me. Best family ever read one caption under a photo of Petrea's dining room. My old china, my silver candlesticks, my stuffing recipe. Smiling faces crowded the frame, laughter frozen midair. Patrice had tagged everyone except me. Another post appeared. Dylan carving the turkey, his wife holding a glass of wine. Petrea leaned into the shot, the same smug tilt of her chin she'd had since she was 12. Underneath, thankful for every blessing. The phone buzzed again. A text. "We saved you a plate. Porch pickup." For a moment I stared at the message, unsure if it was cruelty or mercy. Then I grabbed my keys. The drive across town was quiet. The streets empty but for the scattered leaves. Petrea's house looked the way it always did. Two bright, two loud windows fogged with warmth. The plate sat on the porch step, covered in foil, the corners already torn. A neighborhood cat pawed at it, licking the gravy. The smell of turkey and cold starch hung in the air. I stood there, the wind tugging at my sleeve, watching the cat claim what was left. I didn't pick it up. I didn't knock. I just turned back to my car and drove home. Inside the house was cool and still. I hung my coat, unplugged the porch light, and stood in the dimness until my eyes adjusted. The quiet wasn't kind, but it was mine. I filled the kettle again, poured the water slowly, and sat down at the table where no one interrupted the silence. Somewhere, a phone buzzed under a pile of unread messages, but I let it. The tea steeped dark and steady, and the house stayed calm. That night, I pulled the old ledger from the bottom drawer of my desk. It still smelled faintly of salt and varnish from the years when my husband used it for his boat repair business. The spine cracked as I opened it, the pages yellowed and soft at the edges. Across the top of the first blank page, I wrote the date in neat block letters. Then I began listing. Electric bill, January through December, 4 years straight. Phone plan. All lines mine included, every month. Tuition for Petrea's master's degree, $23,000. Emergency dental visit for Evan, $850. Mortgage supplement temporary, nearly $200 a month for 6 years. Groceries, insurance, copays, holiday expenses. The numbers grew heavy, crowding the paper. I flipped the page, then another, filling each one with what I'd given, what I'd covered, what I'd excused. At first, my hands trembled. Then the rhythm steadied my pen, moving faster, surer. When the total passed 30,000, I stopped counting. The room was quiet, except for the faint buzz of the porch light I'd forgotten to switch off. I looked down at the columns my life measured in transactions. Each line told its own story: the month Petrea lost her job, the time Evan said his paycheck was delayed, the Christmas I paid for her plane tickets and called it my gift. At the top of the next page, I wrote slowly, "This isn't revenge, it's reckoning." I slid open the desk drawer and took out the folder of receipts I'd been saving out of habit. Folded grocery slips, printed statements, proof of every yes I'd given. One by one, I taped them into the ledger until the pages looked like a patchwork of quiet confessions. When I closed the book, my hands smelled faintly of ink and glue. I left it open on the desk to dry. The air in the house felt different, cleaner, sharper. In the dim light, the words on the last page shone like something alive. Mrs. Lyle chose the same corner table she always did, the one by the window with a view of the park fountain. She waved when I walked in, her silver hair pinned tight, her reading glasses already waiting on the napkin. I brought the ledger, I said, sliding the worn book across to her. She adjusted her glasses and opened it without a word. The cafe was quiet, except for the hiss of milk steaming and the soft clatter of cups. Page after page, her eyes moved. She didn't gasp or frown, just made small notes on the paper sleeve of her coffee cup. When she finally looked up, her voice was calm. "You've been financing affection, Amaranta." I folded my hands around the mug, feeling the heat against my palms. "I thought I was helping." "You were," she said gently. "But helping stops when it hurts the helper. That's the part they never tell you." I nodded, though my throat tightened. She reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a thin stack of forms, bank authorization changes, account transfers, service cancellations. Step by step, she said, "You revoke autopay. You move your account numbers. You tell them this change is final." I stared at the signature lines. "She's still my daughter." Mrs. Lyle stirred her coffee. "Then teach her what mothers rarely do: consequences." For a long moment, I couldn't move. The steam from my cup blurred the ink on the papers. Then I picked up the pen. My hand trembled as I signed the first line, then steadied on the second firm by the third. When it was done, she reached over and rested her hand on mine. "That's not punishment," she said. "That's protection." Outside, the fountain kept running quiet and sure. I tucked the papers into my bag, the ledger on top. My hand no longer shook when I zipped it shut. I started early the next morning before I could talk myself out of it. The kitchen clock ticked while I went down the list Mrs. Lyle had written on a yellow pad. First, the electric company. I called and waited through the hold music until a woman's voice said, "Can I help you today?" "Yes," I said. "Remove my card from all linked accounts." "Do you want to add a new one?" she asked. "No, just remove it." There was a pause. "All right, ma'am. It's done." Next, the phone plan. I sat at the desk. The ledger opened beside me and typed through the online forms. Petrea's number, Evan's number, both gone from the shared account. The screen flashed confirmation in green letters. For a moment, my hands hovered above the keyboard. Then I closed the laptop. Last, the mortgage autopay. The line disconnected twice before a man finally took my call. "I'd like to cancel automatic payments," I said, "effective immediately." He asked if I was sure. I've never been more certain. By afternoon, the checklist was complete. The house hummed quietly around me the way it used to before everyone moved in and out of my life with their needs. The silence felt clean. That night, the first missed call appeared, Petrea's name glowing on the screen, then Evan's. By morning, there were 20. By evening, 40. By the second day, 87. The voicemails piled up one after another. "Mom, the Wi-Fi's down." "Did you forget to pay? Are you trying to prove a point?" This is ridiculous. Please call me back. Their voices tangled together, anger slipping into panic, panic into pleading. I set the phone face down on the table and filled the kettle. Outside, the rain started slow, deliberate drops against the window. I poured my tea, added honey, and sat by the glass watching the water trail down. The phone buzzed again on the counter, then went still. The house stayed quiet, and I let it. The call came just after dawn. Petrea's voice was splintered between anger and fear. Mom, the mortgage payment bounced. They're saying we'll be charged a late fee. Can you just please fix this? Her voice cracked on the last word. I could hear Evan in the background muttering something sharp and low. I'll come by, I said. And I'll bring the binder. When I arrived, the kitchen smelled of burnt coffee and panic. Petrea sat at the table, her hands twisted in a dish towel. Evan leaned against the counter, eyes darting between us. I don't know what happened, she began. The system must have— It didn't, I said, setting the binder on the table. Its plastic cover looked out of place against the crumbs and unopened mail. I stopped the payments. Evan straightened, without warning. That's not right. You had warning, I said, opening the binder to the first page. You've had it for years. Petrea swallowed hard. Mom, you can't just abandon us. We've got Bill's the baby. I turned the page toward her. Each sheet was labeled every payment, highlighted every bank transfer traced back to my account. You banned me from Thanksgiving, I said quietly. Now I'm banning myself from being your bank. She flipped through the pages, her fingers leaving smudges on the paper. I didn't realize it was this much. That's the problem, I said. You didn't want to realize. Evan's voice hardened. This feels personal. It is, I said. So was every time you used my card. The room went still. The only sound was the refrigerator humming behind us. I reached into the binder, pulled out a small sticky note, and slid it across the table. What's this? Petrea asked. How to set up your own autopay. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. Evan shifted, but said nothing. I closed the binder and gathered it under my arm. You'll figure it out, I said softly. You're both capable adults. Start acting like it. I walked to the door. Behind me, the kettle began to whistle on their stove, shrill, insistent, impossible to ignore. The family group chat came back to life 3 days after the binder meeting. Patrice sent the first message. Who's handling the shared bills now? Dylan replied with a string of confused emojis. Then nothing. The thread went still again, like a room where someone had coughed too loudly. Petrea hadn't posted a thing since Thanksgiving. No photos, no updates, not even the usual inspirational quotes she used to fill the silence between arguments. For the first time in years, my phone stayed still through dinner. The quiet was heavy, but not cruel. I filled my evenings with small tasks. Watered the violets. Folded laundry while the radio murmured low. The house felt bigger, the kind of space that makes its own echo. Every so often, I'd catch myself reaching for the phone out of habit, then stop, fingers hovering over the screen before pulling back. Late one night, as I rinsed my teacup, the phone buzzed once on the counter. A single message. I didn't realize how much you did. I'm sorry, Petrea. The words blinked under the light like something fragile. I read them once, then again. There was no punctuation beyond that small apology, no pleading or justification. Just quiet. I set the phone down beside the sink. The window above the faucet was open a crack. The night air smelled of rain. I stood there until the screen went dark. Later, I folded a stack of clean dish towels and set them in the drawer. The motion steadied me. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, then fell silent again. The message stayed unread in my heart, though not unanswered. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I simply let it exist, proof that the world had shifted and that not every silence meant absence. When I turned off the lights, the house held its breath with me. The quiet was no longer hollow. It was waiting. By spring, the air in Savannah had turned soft again. The azaleas bloomed outside the library windows, and the afternoons filled with the sound of scissors snipping and thread pulling through fabric. I had 6 women in my sewing class that day, each working on their own small project. Some mended old blouses, others stitched new cushion covers. I showed them how to hem without puckering the edge the same way my mother once showed me. When the class ended, one of the women hugged me and said, "You've got the hands of someone who's repaired a lot more than cloth." I smiled because it was true. That evening, I walked home carrying a tin of loose buttons someone had given me as thanks. On the porch, the lamp I'd repaired myself flickered once, then steadied. Beneath it, the new brass plaque shone in the low light, built by boundaries. Kept by respect. I stood there for a moment, feeling the quiet hum of the neighborhood around me. The house looked smaller than I remembered, but lighter somehow, like it had learned to breathe with me. When I stepped inside, a car door shut out front. Petrea's voice followed tentative, uncertain. "Mom," I turned. She was standing by the walkway holding a paper bag. "I brought lemon bars," she said. "I remembered you liked them." I nodded toward the porch. "They'll go well with tea." We sat on the steps, 2 mugs between us, steam curling in the mild air. She talked about work, about the garden she was trying to start. I listened, answering when I could. No apologies, no accusations, just small talk, stitched carefully between silences. At one point, she looked up at the lamp and smiled faintly. "You fixed it." "Yes," I said. "It just needed rewiring." She hesitated, then reached out and brushed her thumb over the plaque. "That's nice." "It is," I said. When she left, she hugged me briefly the way people do when they're still learning how to mean it. I watched her drive away, then went back inside and turned off the porch light. The house held its calm. For the first time in years, so did I.